Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Smith. I'm Group Managing Director of People to People in Australia and Frog Recruitment in New Zealand. Thank you for joining us today for our most recent talent webinar, where we'll be looking at the market and job opportunities in 2022 by having a look back at some of the key statistics in 2021. It's a sunny day here in Sydney. For the first time in ages, actually, and I think you can probably see the sun coming through the window and bouncing off the top of my head here. So I'm just pleased that it's actually a beautiful sunny day here in Sydney. So today we're going to take up about 45 minutes of your time, and the first thing I'm going to do, though, is acknowledge the traditional custodians of country and pay respect to their elders and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander and Maori peoples today. Today, I'm actually in the Parramatta office of People to People, and Parramatta has been occupied by the Burramagutl people of the Darug clan for the last 60,000 years. So they settled at the top of the Parramatta River here. So I do acknowledge them today. So today's content is extracted from the P2P Post. Now, this is a market report exclusive to People and not available publicly. We provide the document as a value add to our clients and job seekers that we're working with. And it's 84 pages of economic updates, company culture, our expert series, and finally, salary tables and trends. Now, this will be available to everybody who attends today, and I will share with you how you can get a hard copy or a digital copy of this particular report at the end of the webinar. Right, so the contents are derived from our considerable resources. So People to People is an organisation that has 8 offices throughout Australia and New Zealand. We get nearly 5 million people visiting our website. We've got 301,000 people visiting our blogs. We've got over, I think the number you see on the screen there is 800,000 candidates on our database. That is now closer to 1 million. Why that information is important is because we extract the information from those that we meet and then compile it into the report. We are an award-winning recruitment agency, and hopefully that the information that you see today you will find useful. So the agenda for today is that we're going to review the market for Australia and New Zealand to start off with. Then we'll be having a chat to Ben Wheeler from our Queensland business. We'll be talking to you about the salary trends and movements and expectations at the moment. Aidan Boast, who is from our Sydney team, will give us a review of the business support market. Kirsten Garrett, the Manager of Accounting and Finance in Sydney, will review the accounting market. Jess Hickey will take us through the human resources sector. And Peter Altamore from our Parramatta team will also be reviewing the supply chain. There will be time for question and answers at the end and also during the presentation. So once each of our presenters have informed us with their content, then there's the opportunity to ask them specific questions. The comments are in the chat, so I can see Daniel has already put hi guys, so we can see them in real time. So please feel free to pop your comments in there, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions in real time. So let's jump into it then. So we'll start with an overview of the Australian and New Zealand market. So it's been a tough year for sure this last year. Long hours, lockdowns, no one was really spared throughout Australia and New Zealand. And as we emerge from the pandemic now, then it's time to reflect on some of those positive changes. So one of the things that we have definitely seen in the marketplace more recently, as that many organisations have redesigned their employee experience, and they've actually, and what I mean by that is flexible working, which we're all very much aware of now, but more nuanced areas such as changes in new office designs. I know that People to People, for example, has redesigned our Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane office in response to the change in work habits. and a lot of organisations are doing that. And also the employer value proposition, or the ability of organisations as they go into the market and how they attract talent. The way you communicate or assess an organisation, whether to join them or not, is very much influenced by that proposition. So there's been a lot of work on that. We'll start now also with the economic snapshot of what's been going on in Australia and New Zealand. And again, these are direct pages from the P2P post, and they'll be available for you to read in more detail. I'll just take you through some of the key points. So the top graph is the GFC versus COVID-19 pandemic and the number of job advertisements through the cycle. So you can actually see that although the COVID recession was deep and quick in terms of the number of months, but we have returned very much to pre-pandemic levels very quickly as compared to the GFC. And so many job seekers now will find that there are many more advertisements out there. I had a meeting with Seek just the day before last, and for the month of October, they were experiencing, or they had the most number of advertisements on their platform in one day ever in the month of October. So the number of opportunities that are out there are much higher than we have experienced previously. So we've also got some projected employment growth by 2024 for the different states. You can see that New South Wales and Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, it's all very positive in terms of the employment growth. The graph in the bottom right-hand side is about part-time work, and there is definitely, despite what we thought there would be greater casualisation, there's actually more permanent part-time work expected into the future, and greater so greater numbers of people in the marketplace as well. Let's have a quick look then at the next slide, if I can, which is basically a breakdown of state by state graphically. So you can see Victoria and New South Wales, the ACT, in terms of the job vacancy numbers that are increasing. And at the bottom, you can see the job advertisements in Australia and in New Zealand. You can see that we are well above pre-pandemic levels, not to the same sort of level that we were prior to the GFC. But as I've just said, when the P2P post was put together, we were well on the way, and we've now eclipsed that in most recent numbers. And you can see, if you just quickly go to the next slide, this is some numbers from Indeed rather than Seek in terms of the job postings on Indeed by state. And you can see that New South Wales is now at 96% above February 2020 levels. It's nearly 100%. Victoria is 109%, and the rest of Australia is 91%. So basically, the number of vacancies that are out there are eclipsing all expectations as we enter into this particular recovery. The last thing I would like to show you is consumer confidence. And the reason I wanted to show consumer confidence, this is both for New Zealand and for Australia, is that consumer confidence often then reflects in the movement of labour between jobs. So there is a lot of talk, some of it warranted, some of it not, about the idea of a great resignation in the first half of 2022. And as we've seen the consumer confidence numbers, Australia is that black line, is now well in excess of where it has been in 16, 17, 18. Then the more confident you are, the more likely it is that you would feel comfortable in changing jobs. So it is certainly the expectation of people to people that although there are lots of job advertisements right now, the number of people who are responding to advertisements is way down. And we would expect that with this consumer confidence levels, that the number of people entering into the marketplace and considering new opportunities at the first half of 22 will be greatly increased because of this consumer confidence number. You can see New Zealand there as well, not quite the same trend. So New Zealand is a little, it's not, with the most recent lockdowns and the length of those lockdowns, we're not seeing the bounce in the consumer confidence. So maybe there's a lag in terms of that return for those who are watching from New Zealand. I can just see in the comments that Justin is Brisbane based and Ben is from Brisbane, and we'll ask him specifically about the market in Brisbane for you, Justin. So please stay tuned when we cross there. So if we can quickly go to the next slide for me. And I just wanted to quickly show you a few statistics about disruption in the workplace as a result. Now, none of this is a surprise, and I won't go through all of the detail. The one thing that I really did want to mention to people is the rebuilding of the workplace and the effect of the hybrid working model. So 71% are expecting a hybrid working model where people will be coming to the office part of the time and obviously working from home part of the time as well. So that is changing the way we work, and it's also changing expectations. The management of remote teams is becoming very important. The one challenge that many human resources contacts that we have at People to People are having right now is the challenge of coaching and training, onboarding of new staff and people who are new to the particular industry. So basically, training, onboarding is very much top of mind for human resources. And there's some very unique and innovative ways that organisations are meeting that challenge. And some with success, and others I must admit are laggards, where they're forcing everybody to return to the office as well. So a lot of that information, as I said, 84 pages in the P2P post. You'll get a copy of that. So we'll make sure that you get that chance to read through all that. But I know that many of you are very keen to hear about. I can see that Robert has said that he'd appreciate some advice on making a career change. I'll make sure that I ask each of the presenters that particular question for you, Robert. So, but first, let's now move on, and we're going to cross to Ben Wheeler, who's the Managing Director of People to People in Queensland, and he's going to be discussing salary movements and wage increases and what's actually been taking place and what we can expect going forward. So over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at the moment. So, salary trends, and this is often the bit in our market trends report that people will generally jump to quite quickly. Of course, there is now a bit of a change around other aspects. I mean, salary is always going to be crucial, but there are a lot more things that are coming through around workplace culture, flexibility, and coming in. But of course, we all pay a keen interest in what we're paid, and obviously want to make sure that we're getting fair pay for the work that we're doing. So, if we're able to bring up the slide where we have salary trends. Doing a bit of history in Australia. So we have been trending downwards essentially from around a peak in 2012, around the percentage increase. And what we're seeing now, and it's been interesting because the data that you've got on the left-hand side, which is the wage price index, is doing a comparison. So we will be able to update that so you can see the difference for the latest stats that have been released. Because the good news is, depending on where you're sitting, that salaries are trending upwards. There's a number of reasons behind this. Certainly, a lot of businesses coming out of that COVID period. And also, we're seeing that the consumer price index, CPI, essentially rising quite a lot at the moment. And it is different for states, but we're looking up to September around 3%. Cost of housing, fuel prices sort of driving that. So there's definitely some pressure coming from that angle. But in particular, and this is one that as recruiters we see a lot of around the supply and demand issues. So in the time I've worked in recruitment since about 2005, I've never seen it so competitive for finding candidates. So we are seeing increases that are outside of your previous sort of couple of percent here and there, because it's simply, you have to pay sometimes 15, 20% to either attract somebody, or, which I think is important coming up to pay rise, sort of if it's a January pay rise, retention. So there will be lots of talk, I'm sure, for a lot of organisations around what pay is going to look like moving into next year. What I'm seeing is that people are benchmarking depending on that particular sector, because I don't think it's the time just to sort of do a whitewash, it will be X%. If I was to answer the question about a general sort of percentage, it's certainly looking like it's on the increase up to around 3. And if you're able to bring up, if we just bring up the next slide, which will show a movement that we've had already. So if we just do a comparison from February, and then the update is every single state for the commercial sector has moved. It's all increased. So there is a trend that the wages are on the up. And as I was saying around the CPI index, that's obviously on the up. The concern for some people, and I know there was an article written in the Courier Mail around the fact that CPI may actually overtake some increases. So you're essentially going backwards. And I think a lot of individuals are thinking very much about that. And from the organisation perspective, of course, all costs are going up as well. So putting up salaries, and of course, we've been through a fairly tumultuous period, is a big move, I suppose, when you're doing your budgets. But anecdotally, if you speak to everybody, it seems as though business is growing, certainly what I'm seeing in Queensland, and just that supply-demand factor, anywhere from your the coffee shop downstairs in our building to tradies, everybody's struggling to find staff. So I think that's significant upward pressure that we're seeing at the moment. And any questions in particular that anyone's would like to answer, feel free to.
Now, Ben, I can see here that Justin is Brisbane-based, so I definitely wanted to ask you. Justin says he's a direct sales professional and currently looking for, obviously, a good employer, strong commissions, etc., in Brisbane. So what is the market like overall in Queensland right now?
Overall, I would say it's very buoyant. So we do tend to see, and it's often what we said before, around December to February, nothing really happens in Brisbane. And I would say that's going to be challenged this year, because we haven't seen much of a slowdown. In fact, we have broken all of our records for the number of roles that have been listed with us, and we haven't seen many put on hold. People are still sort of running to that finish line. So I'd say the market is very buoyant, and I think it is certainly a good time if you are considering a new opportunity, or to even just have a chat with a consultant like ourselves around your salary, which I think is often the best way to actually look at the data, do your research, but talk to a recruiter or someone that's in that hiring role and say what they're seeing. So Brisbane market is good, I would definitely say, and we expect that to continue leading up to Christmas.
So we've had a couple of people here. I think Robert was one that was saying that he wants to make a change out of education, and we can see Philip is saying here that he's worked in hospitality, and he's looking also about hearing about industry changes and repositioning yourself. Given that the market is so buoyant in Queensland right now, does this create opportunities for people like Philip who want to make a change?
Absolutely. And one of the things, and I've got a theory on this, but we're talking about getting an Uber, and we've sort of struggled more recently to do that. It seems that there's less drivers around, and I've got a theory on it, that a lot of people that were doing Uber in between looking for that role or their real passion have actually been able to actually take on that position, because it's so candidate short. It does mean that employers have to be more flexible, whereas we used to sometimes be given we need a 10 out of 10 for this role, we're not going to consider anybody else. Well, the fact is, it's very difficult to hide. You don't have that decision power anymore as an employer. So if you're looking to change industries now, I do think is a good time to do that. It's very important to think about what key skills you have and how it's transferable, of course, but I would say a good time to be looking at it.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Ben. And I'll just remind everybody that you will be getting a copy of the P2P post, and there are salary tables in the P2P post. So you'll be able to benchmark your current salary. You'll be able to consider, well, okay, if I'm looking for an increase and I'd like to benchmark to what I should be getting, then there's a range in each of the different geographies throughout Australia and New Zealand. That's all the capital cities and New Zealand, where you can actually do that benchmarking exercise. So stay tuned and I'll let you know how you can grab a hold of that. Okay, so now let's move and have a quick chat to Aidan Boast, who's based in our Sydney City office. Aidan's a senior consultant who specialises in the business support sector. Aidan, over to you.
Good afternoon, Mark, and hello, everybody, and thanks so much for your time. Yeah, really keen on talking about the Sydney market in particular, business support, business specialists, which I recruit within. So we're going to bring up a couple of slides to talk about that and make a couple of comments on what we found through the P2P post. So we getting straight into it, we experienced that a lot of short-term recruitment was coming back post-COVID. There was a lot of confidence in hiring. So we've had roles such as short-term receptionist positions, urgent customer service roles, and I'll talk more a little bit more into depth about that later on. But yeah, it's been a really interesting year. Obviously, we've seen the flows come through with different outbreaks in different states and different areas. But Sydney in general, the short-term recruitment seems to be the step forwards. We've not seen so many executive assistants and personal assistant positions, which has been quite interesting. I know them type of roles, in additional to receptionist roles, are always nice to have roles. We've not seen that come back on the EA and PA roles. One particular client I spoke with last week said that the managing directors and senior managers have now become more self-sufficient, and they've managed that through the COVID time. So it was quite an interesting comment there. Most officers have asked for temps. That's my area. I specialize in that temp and contract space. Most have asked the temps to go back in the office and actually learn and pick up the skills on the job from the office rather than remote. And we've seen that since the lockdown started to ease, where when we're in the lockdown, everybody's working from home. We're now seeing that flexibility where if you do get a 3 to 6 month temp assignment, there's a little bit more, I suppose, lifestyle, work-life balance for you to eventually work from home once you've picked up them skills. So one of my colleagues actually commented they've actually hired a temp who is overseas and currently working for a Sydney-based organisation overseas. So that's something completely new. We haven't done on a large scale before, but I do predict probably 2022 we'll start to see a lot more remote or even overseas work coming through. So as I mentioned, we had urgent roles in customer service. So for example, we recruited for a pathologist who was doing COVID testing, and we had a good success with urgent roles in customer service. So just to elaborate a little bit more in that customer service space, there's been a major shift in customer satisfaction. So there's a lot more employment, a lot more jobs coming up within that customer service space. And the aim is to keep the current customers happy, because we're not seeing as many new customers coming in as a whole with organizations who are recruiting for. So another thing in customer service is a lot of businesses saw COVID as a great time to implement new systems. So there's been a lot of changes in upskilling the current teams, and we're also hired people who are specialized in a particular system, ties in with different areas within our company. But customer service has seen a huge impact in rehiring people who have a specific skill to help them with the new implementation. So another one of the trends which I found has increased a lot. So there's been a huge investment in mental health. For example, there's been life leave talked about a lot, where people have time off just to catch up on their life. We've had mental health days where this is a permanent and contract employees have been offered mental health days. There's also been external mental health speakers going into our clients and speaking about mental health, how to manage it, and educating staff a lot more on that. And also we've seen a well-being, so well-being allowances, gym memberships, days off for well-being has been included for staff as well. So in customer service, just to wrap up on customer service space, the last thing I did see was a lot more chatbots are coming in place in terms of hiring staff. So somebody who can use data entry as well as customer service. And I'm starting to find now that we're getting a lot more positions where they say they're customer service roles, but data entry is the main focus on that because of that chatbot system, which a lot more people are relying on. So one thing I wanted to point out as well, and just for as a candidate perspective, for you to get an idea of the market, you'll tend to see that the market picks up when the short-term roles come on board. So when agencies are calling you and saying, hey, we have a job for 2 weeks, are you interested? That's when you can tend to find that there is a lot more confidence coming back into the market. We've also experienced, as I know a couple of people have mentioned already, jobs are at an all-time high. So yeah, it's a really, really good time to be looking for work at this stage. In terms of industries, if there are particular industries you'd like to focus on where there's been an increase, healthcare has been the number one, for obvious reasons, been the number one industry where a lot of hiring has been taking place. We found property. There's been a lot of movement in that property space as well. Property market is booming at the moment. And then lastly, retail. So we've as a organization as well have hired short-term retail, casual roles where people may want an extra income even at the weekends, which has been great for people to help them out financially over the weekend as well. So yeah, I think for next year, I'm the same. I'd agree, and I'm the same as Ben. I don't see Christmas time being a quiet period at all, and I do see 2020 to be an incredibly busy time. So yeah, it's really exciting times for 2022. Is there any questions anybody has?
Yes, I can see that Rosa, now she is based in Melbourne, so we'll make sure we Jess covers off on this question as well. But she's wondering if there's any positions where they're just purely work from home opportunities at the moment.
We are seeing them coming through, just not as much. I feel that clients do have a little bit of hesitancy around that piece of just working from home. There's that managerial piece. How are you able to monitor them? We're seeing a lot more systems and technology come through where that can happen. So there are some roles where you can work remotely from home. I think in a learning piece and an educational piece, the clients are finding it a lot more beneficial to be in the office and learning face to face with someone, seeing how they work and experience and how through an experienced employee works. So yeah.
Okay, great. I can also see, John, I'll just acknowledge your question in regards to salaries and on Indeed and Seek, and we'll come to that one towards the end. Vlad, I've also got yours here where you're a CFO in a small to medium. We're going to cross to Kirsten, who's our accounting and finance manager, and I'll ask her that question for you as well. Madden, are you looking for an opportunity based coming from India to Australia? Given the border restrictions and visa requirements at the moment, that is not possible and through agencies at the moment. So that's definitely not possible. Mandeep, you're looking for a customer service role based in Melbourne. I'll make sure that we let the team know. We'll also get the contact details popped up on the screen there for you so you can get in touch with somebody in Melbourne. But firstly, now let's cross to Kirsten Garrett. Now, Kirsten is the manager of our accounting and finance team in Sydney, and she's going to give us an overview of the accounting market.
Thank you, Mark, and hello to everyone online and those who may watch us on a delayed broadcast. I guess some of my notes today are in line with what my colleagues have been saying, but the accounting market has certainly held strong during 2021 across permanent, temporary and the contracting space. Quite often when one's high, permanent volumes are high, temp and contract are low and vice versa. But I think all the consultants have been busy in all the sectors, which is very positive. If I was to describe 2020 for accountants, it was a year of being in survival mode, whereas 2021 is a recovery mode, which has led to a lot of opportunities for people out there and for businesses to start back on projects that they may not have looked at last year with all the uncertainty that was about. Like some of my colleagues, skills in demand were very much, particularly in Sydney, and Ben may be able to concur up in Brisbane as well, in that traditional engine room accounting space. So financial accountants, management accountants, often looking for people who are making their first or second move from the profession, so CA qualified. And similarly for that step below, the assistant accountant level, where we're looking for career focused people who are really on the move in their career, but engine room level roles. So the roles where you're really helping the business get the information they need, know where they sit as far as their budgets and their forecasts go for the coming periods, have certainly been the type of roles we've been seeing a lot of in Sydney. Payroll went through the roof last year, and that has remained strong, but probably just tapered off to a more normal level. All the consultants, certainly in the Sydney space, have been steadily recruiting payroll. So that accounting, financial management accounting, and the payroll areas have been the what we've seen as the areas in demand. If I was to look at industries, we're often asking, and some of you have asked today, can you make a move to other sectors? I'd watch the industries that have been a little bit hotter than others. Property, healthcare, and logistics were certainly very strong for a lot of 2021. Pleasingly, though, we've seen it level out with other industries coming back into play in the back end of the year. Professional services and legal in the accounting sector has bounced back. Aged care and aged care related industries. So if there's a business whose product and services are linked to the aged care sector, we've certainly seen that bounce back, and we've been recruiting in a number of related industries to the aged care sector. What I will say, however, about the recruitment piece is that hiring managers have remained quite rigid and quite focused on the criteria they're looking for with each vacancy that they're recruiting. We're certainly encouraging hiring managers to be flexible, to think outside the square. And it does take, I guess, a couple of goes at it to get them across the line there. General advice to the market, to the job seeker first and foremost, make yourself stand out. Be flexible, as Aidan intonated, to return to the workplace, face-to-face employment, most likely in a hybrid arrangement. 77% of the companies we spoke to earlier in the year are offering those hybrid arrangements. But there is a push as I recruit in the permanent space, and we've got new starters in roles in the back end of this year and into 2022, for people to come back in full-time, 5 days a week in the office for the first few months, and then maybe revert to some kind of hybrid arrangement. My humble opinion, for what it's worth, if you are one of these ambitious candidates who is really focused on your career, I think you'll agree being able to work face-to-face and collaborate in person with your colleagues will stand you in good stead. You'll be that visible person. They'll know the effort that you're putting in. So whilst the hybrid arrangements are there for, 3/4 of companies out there are offering those, I would encourage people to be available, be visible, in order to stand out within the workforce yourself there. I just want to talk to one or two of those comments, if it's all right, Mark. I'm going off script. Career transitions. Robert, I'm an ex-school teacher. 25 years ago, I joined this industry. The thing about making a complete transition is about your transferable skills. I think Ben might have mentioned that. Whilst there is pressure on salaries for employers, if you are and candidates are commanding in their areas of expertise higher salaries to move, I would say if you are looking to make a complete industry shift, be flexible. You might have been top of the table and top of the hierarchy in your area of expertise, i.e. I was a 10-year qualified teacher and I moved to recruitment. I had to accept that there was going to be a disparity there. So if you can be open on salaries, do. Think about areas you're passionate about. because you are going to present more positively. If you are targeting areas that you believe you're good at, you're genuinely interested in, and this will show my age, but there was a fantastic book written over 20 years ago, and some people on the call may remember it. What Colour is My Parachute? It's just good as a professional guide, a reading, professional reading to help you think outside the square as to what opportunities you could possibly transition to. Are there any questions from what I've said?
There is another one here from Lou Lee, and she's, how easy is it to move from Australia to New Zealand for work opportunities for a senior accountant?
I have definitely, throughout my years of recruitment, placed people who have done that move. It comes down to the skills. Sometimes there was a very slight difference in the CA qualification in New Zealand and Australia, despite that organisation having combined together now. It is probably one of the easier moves to make. I would recommend, because hiring managers can be a little bit rigid at times, making sure you have a hook, whether it be a system or an industry overlap there. But generally speaking, it is an easier move to make from New Zealand to Australia than maybe some of the other moves that people might try and do internationally. And of course, outside of COVID restrictions, visas work in our favour.
Yeah, there's no issues with crossing the ditch at all. There was actually our New Zealand business, which is Frog Recruitment. They like to call Australia the West Island, and there was a whole piece in the New Zealand Herald about the West Island attracting staff from New Zealand. So Lee, absolutely, it is possible. Obviously, borders open and permitting. I would suggest that if you're keen to make a move, then you can apply, and it wouldn't be a problem. Now, Vlad, let's cover this one off. Vlad is he's looking for his next role. I was a CFO and an SME, now self-employed, looking to get back into accounting and finance, but not sure how I fit in. Also open to something in financial crime. I have little experience in the sector. I'm struggling to get an interview for accounting and finance position, wondering where he's going wrong. I suppose somebody who's maybe taken a break and then trying to come back in is the answer to the question. Kirsten, do you have any advice for Vlad? And as you're based in Melbourne, Vlad, I would suggest that you get in touch with Ben too.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, Vlad, and one that sometimes is harder to comprehend because with all due respects, senior candidates have a really vast array of skills. It's all about targeting a business or a size of company particularly, where and positioning yourself so that the existing team members, maybe the CFO of that business, is not going to feel threatened or that you're wanting their job there. There's no easy answer, I will admit. I would encourage you to ensure that your Excel skills are as advanced as you can make them. Those courses are readily available and for free. Think about the industries you've worked in. If you've been running your own business in accounting, I'm not sure if I heard that correctly, then think about the industry sectors that you've assisted in. And maybe it's all about picking up the phone as well. Again, the old school approach, because your resume on paper may not be show you as relevant, I guess, to a role that you happen to be applying to. Whereas if you can pick up the phone to either the recruiter, if it is a recruiter, and I'd like to think they always put their contact details on the ads, or to a business and actually speak to someone, you will find you'll get a more positive response than just firing off an online application and getting that standard reply, because quite often you're going to look overqualified, which is a very frustrating term, I know. You're going to look like that on paper, but when you speak to somebody, you may get a different response.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kirsten. Now, OJAS says not many employers are willing to hire somebody from another industry. That is not normally the case. It is difficult to make that shift, OJAS, but in this market, with where it's at right now, your chances are greatly improved. Jess, who is one of our senior consultants in Melbourne, is going to give us a rundown of the human resources sector. Over to you, Jess.
Mark, happy Thursday, everyone. Lovely to be joining you. So, yeah, I guess we'll dive straight into it. So, in regards to HR, what we do know is that many HR professionals upskilled significantly as a result of the pandemic. But with this came additional pressures and responsibilities for our HR professionals. The role of the HR professional finally took a seat at the table in terms of executive influence throughout the pandemic. And I think that that's really changed the way that we view the HR function forever. And it's a really exciting time for HR professionals to be really leveling up in their careers. What this meant for the labour market is, however, obviously, is an increase in salary expectations for those who did work tirelessly throughout the pandemic. And in addition to this, HR professionals have really reflected on how supportive their organisation was throughout that time. And these negative or positive associations have created a shift in the market. Generally speaking, we have seen more HR professionals choose to make the move, particularly on that senior end, which has obviously meant internal promotions for intermediate talent, which has definitely caused a tighten in the market in that junior to intermediate bracket. So if you are a junior or intermediate candidate in the HR space, it's a really good time to be looking. Lots of opportunities available for you up to kind of business partner level. The complexities around COVID for the healthcare space has actually seen a lead in the demand for HR professionals. So we've seen that HR professionals have been in demand in the healthcare space the most, which is great. It's exciting. There is a massive complexity around, keeping people safe throughout COVID. So, and also potentially on the other end of that spectrum, a little bit of burnout for people who did, work in HR throughout healthcare in the pandemic. So just a bit of shift from that particular market. We've also seen a strong emergence in the need for in-house talent acquisition professionals. I know in People2People Victoria specifically, we have several temporary and permanent vacancies within the TA space. So if you are looking for a role, please feel free to contact us. Organisations seem to have woken up to the idea of a dedicated talent specialist within their organisation and the value this can bring to attracting and retaining talent. So yeah, a bit of a market update for you all. Any questions or anything like that?
I do. We have got one from Rose Norton. So she has experience in learning and development, and she's looking for a new role in Brisbane. What's going on in Brisbane, Ben? So she's asking for tips how to make a CV and cover letter stand out to an employer.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the thing that we would look for as recruiters is definitely that transferable skill set. And also really highlighting that within your CV. So tangible examples of when you have applied certain skills is going to be really important in highlighting that you can, complete the duties and responsibilities listed. So for me, I love the key achievements section. So what have you used? How have you used and applied these skills to promote and foster excellent learning and development, or whatever it is, whatever you're a specialist in? How have you applied these skills to your organisation, and how has that led to a positive outcome for your organisation? So yeah, I'm a massive believer in the key achievements sector. It provides that real tangible evidence that you have completed things and you have been able to provide that support. So that's where I would focus my time and energy on a CV or a cover letter.
Okay, great. All right. Now, while I've got you, because obviously you're down in Victoria, so sure. How's the Victorian market right now?
It's a really exciting time, I think, for us all here in Victoria after many months of lockdown and a lot of uncertainty. I think lots of our candidates are feeling really certain again in regards to their job search. We are starting to feel, a lot more, certainly still a candidate short market by every means, but still just a little bit more, candidates who perhaps have been super busy or, potentially were thinking about a move pre-pandemic and then decide that wasn't for them. Some people are starting to kind of open up those Seek emails or people-to-people job alerts again, which is really great news for us. And we're just kind of starting to leverage off that. Certainly what I will say is that when candidates do decide that they want to move, there is a lot of noise in the market at the moment. So, you're going to be getting, hundreds of LinkedIn notifications and Seek and Indeed and other recruiters calling you and things like that. So just make sure that you're really specific on what you want and you're really protecting your personal brand from that perspective. So, there are a lot of opportunities out there, but just making sure that you really kind of hone in and really use the filter method to kind of find those ideal opportunities for you, and certainly make sure that you are open to those kind of square peg round hole recruiting, transferable skills and all that kind of thing. Just open yourself up and have the conversation. So yeah, but it's really nice down here. It's nice to be talking to candidates who are excited about their job search again and not tentative. So if you are in a position to be moving, I would absolutely 100% recommend doing it right now. Call me.
Excellent. Rightio. Thanks, Jess. Lots going on down in Victoria. A very hot market at the moment. From Indeed there, we saw 109% above February 2020 levels in terms of the number of vacancies being listed on Indeed. So now let's have a quick chat to our specialist supply chain recruiter in Western Sydney, Peter Altamore. Peter, over to you.
Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon to everyone watching as well. It's safe to say this year has been similar to the daily life of a recruiter, and that's what we call the champagne and razor blades. There were many industries that were not affected by COVID-19 outbreak, but one that had been busier than ever was the supply chain. It definitely saw an increase in demand and also a huge change in trends. So when China entered the lockdown in early 2020, Australian businesses across many industries reported delays in deliveries up to a few weeks. And in some cases, there were difficulties in sourcing the products as factories that were overseas were either shut down or operating at a reduced capacity. With warehouse workers, majority, if not all the roles we had were considered to be essential. So the intake of the jobs that we saw was hardly affected. But before 2020, we saw in our market report that 1 in every 4 supply chain teams weren't optimizing their processes. However, that number has dropped now to only 7% of businesses not adapting, with a large focus integrated on the technological improvements, seeing 34% of companies recognizing the need to continuously improve all their procedures. A really good example of this was, and a company that is definitely leading the way would be Amazon. And I'm sure that many of the people viewing in here today, including myself, have bought something from Amazon before. Due to open in 2020, they've actually built a robotics fulfillment center in Western Sydney, and that will see humans and robots working safely alongside each other to fulfill their orders. The warehouse, it's massive. It's roughly the size of 22 rugby fields, and it was built completely flat on the inside so that they can use AI technology to move the self-driving robots around the warehouse using lights, barcodes, and cameras. And they basically pick up the pallets and deliver them to workers to pick, pack, and ship the orders. With this, so it just goes to show how good AI can be to a business. It's said to almost double Amazon's operational footprint in Australia and could potentially see customers receive orders within 12 hours of ordering them. So yeah, they're paving the way for how things are going at the moment, and Woolworths is following behind. Another big change that we saw was 55% of businesses were looking to move into a leaner inventory and network design model, as well as 41% of businesses adding sustainability towards their KPIs. By moving into this direction, companies can more carefully cater for the changing and increasing demand of consumers while hopefully running at the lowest possible cost. Just going back to Amazon as well, their new facility, Western Sydney, right next to Badgerys Creek Airport. So that's how they can create such short lead times for their customers. Woolworths is also adopting this strategy by combining the 3 of the warehouses they currently have at the moment into one massive distribution center. And they've strategically based this in Moorebank, which gave them direct access to the Port Botany rail line, and it will also see 26,000 trucks off the roads each year, which is significantly reducing their carbon footprint. And although it has been a rough year, the market report stated 58% of candidates are still optimistic, and they're confident that opportunities will improve. And there was only 7% stating that they have felt the worst was yet to come. So for everyone's sake, I hope that's not the case. Look, this year, supply chain leaders have had to quickly adapt to the rapidly changing environment, with the intake of skilled workers taking a bit of a hit, mainly due to the halt of the flow in supply of the overseas workers. Many of the in-demand roles stemmed from supply chain analysts, supply planners, as well as inventory managers as well. And in terms of the skills that were in demand, to no surprise, it was in line with the roles that were in demand, and it was more of the expert qualities that people were looking at, such as having an analytical mindset and just being able to adapt to the market by problem solving. That about wraps up the supply chain update. Were there any questions for anyone?
There was an interesting one, I think, from Andrea saying that asking about vaccine mandates and whether there's what's going on in terms of the marketplace. I think her exact words were clients, people are losing their jobs because of the vaccine mandates. What's your experience? Because I know you're in the temporary and contract space, Peter, in terms of clients asking for vaccine status.
Yeah, so majority of the clients that we deal with at the moment, they do have the vaccine mandates in. So every worker, because of the size of the warehouses. So one of the clients that we do work with based in Eunora have a warehouse, and at any given point in time, there can be up to 300 to 400 people working within the warehouse. And obviously in line with the public health orders, it was the decision that they came to where they would mandate vaccines so that every worker in the warehouse would have to be vaccinated. And I've seen that happen at a lot of our other clients as well across Sydney. I guess if there were to be an outbreak, the time off would be more of an impact than anything else would be. And closing down the warehouse for a certain period of time would also be detrimental to them.
So it's both a commercial and a health and safety decision there as well. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. Now we have 8 minutes left for questions and answers. So I'll just quickly check to see if we've covered off all of the questions. I can see that Anna Maria has asked about fully remote working in Melbourne, and Jess, maybe if I could just pass to you to quickly answer that question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, very similar to Aidan's sentiment in that if we have seen an uptick in the amount of remote working of opportunities available, but I guess on the flip side of that, the training and onboarding piece, the value that being in the physical office does bring is something that employers are really looking for. So, the conversation around remote working can certainly be had, and a lot of organisations do have the resources and supplies to be able to support fully remote working. But generally speaking, that's a conversation to be had after a probationary period or training and onboarding can be completed, and you are kind of working at the expectations of the employer. There is, I guess, concern around, making sure that that candidates are able to access, one-on-one resources, and the best way to do that is in the physical office. So, generally speaking, most of our organisations do have a remote working policy, but we are asking candidates if they are open to working in the physical office just throughout the training and probationary period.
Okay, great. And Aaron, I can see that you've asked this question. Is it very hard to get a job for MBA graduates? I'm looking for opportunities for nearly a year, and I haven't got any responses. Who would, maybe Ben?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. And I saw that you sent me an email as well. Thank you very much, Aaron. I think I'd answer that by saying having an MBA qualification definitely has recognition by employers. But experience does I think weigh more heavily on that. So just because someone has done an MBA, I'm not sure exactly the situation. It means that someone could go into a role and use that straight away. Often the experience would be at a certain level, then the MBA would come into play. So definitely happy to have a chat to you about that. But I suspect in doing an MBA, if you're looking to get in a role where you'd use that quite early on without much experience, it's a challenge, and you don't see people able to do an MBA then move into a senior role straight away.
Yeah, it's often the analogy I like to use is education is like a key to a door, to a new room. So once you get into that room, then suddenly you're in the room with all the other people with an MBA who have experience. So you sort of, it's a bit of chicken and egg, but it's a differentiator, but it's not the reason why somebody will hire you initially. Okay, all right. Now we've got just 5 minutes to go, so I can see that a couple of people are typing with questions. But whilst we're waiting for those to come up on screen, I'll just let everybody know how do you get a copy of the P2P post so that you can see all of the information that's in there, and also the get a hold of those salary tables so that you can benchmark your own salary. Then you don't have to do anything. We're going to email you a digital copy straight after the webinar. So if you've registered for the webinar, then clearly you have, then you will get a digital copy. If you're interested in receiving a physical copy, now, has anybody got a physical copy in front of them? Because I've neglected, there we go. So maybe if you could pop Peter up on screen, that's what it looks like right there. So if you'd like a copy, then all you need to do is drop us an email. And if I could ask, there we go. We're popping it into the comments there. If you just email if you like, we'll post it out to you. We'll get that done. So just a couple of questions here left, and then we'll let everybody go. Mukesh is based in Perth, currently working with the Department of Justice, and wants to switch to the legal profession. Now, Mukesh, we do have a specialist legal team in WA. The person that you should speak to is Kim Padmore. The majority of the work that we do in WA is legal support. So once again, the qualification itself is only part of the equation. It's how you can use your previous experience to actually leverage that experience to get into that role. Best thing to do is to have a chat to Kim, and we'll make sure we get Kim's details up on the screen there for you. Graham wants to work in quality and business systems management. I'm not sure the rest of I will answer that question in saying that business systems and quality are very important right now. There is high demand, Graham. And without seeing your CV, I couldn't make any assessment on your particular background, but I'd encourage you to get in touch with the team as well. If you have I can see you typing now. If you have a specific question, then please let me know. Rightio, I think that's it, everybody. So we're right on 57 minutes. So thank you for joining us today. You will all get a copy of the P2P post. If you have any questions, please get in touch. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day, enjoy the summer, and we'll see you all again in the new year.